Other news. Now, you might have missed that entire intro. And if you're catching this later, I'm going to pull it down and redo it because I had my mic muted. But this morning, I'm super excited for our lesson today. We're going to be talking about the new model of small business leadership. And this is supremely important because we're going to talk about Wolves in Yellowstone, a TEDx conference I attended in 2013 with Diego Uribe, and a concept he brought about, and something the illustrious Jackie Roach showed me recently called spiral economies, and how these can come together because we're in a post-trust, or what we could call a trustless society. And in a post, there's Stump Nation. Good morning. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you stopping by, Stump Nation. And if we know each other IRL in real life, please let me know. If we've met in IRL, please let me know. And if we haven't, we should. Let's make sure we connect. But in today's show, we're going to talk about what I call zero hierarchy, or a trustless small business model, because we'll be lurking and listening in the background as I'm working right now. You got it. But what we're talking about in this trustless zero hierarchy small business model, where this is in contrast to the traditional business model, which is at risk. So we're going to talk about that. And if you give me some grace, I'm going to be scratching at what this model is. It won't be perfect. It won't be refined. This is something that I was studying throughout the weekend. But before all that, you know we're going to be covering other news. And with the other news, we're going to talk about this real quick. I'm going to actually skip a lot of the news because for the sake of time, I am starting a little early. But for the sake of time, because I got to be somewhere at 6:47 o'clock, I want to actually give you the meat of this lesson, get your feedback so I can refine my thoughts about what I call zero hierarchy or trustless small business. So we're going to talk about that. But before any of that, let's talk about morning cup of gratitude. Apparently, Stump Nation is already working. And for those of you who stop in later, I want to hear what you're working on, what you're grateful for. Because if you can't start your day with gratitude, do you even have the right paradigm to be available for the awesome circumstances that life is going to bring for you? I'll go ahead and start with my own morning cup of gratitude mug. Here we go. I am massively grateful for the people in my life right now. I have been coming across what could only be termed as these divine encounters with supremely intelligent people that are feeding me material right now. I've mentioned Jackie Roach several times, but other people, Jarrett Carpenter, Matt, don't know his last name, from Salesforce, but he also is working on some side projects. These people are bringing amazing materials into my life that are putting together thoughts that I've been sitting on for quite some time. And so these awesome thoughts are feeding the very lesson that we're going to have today, but I am grateful for people, because within people there are answers to your questions. In fact, I've only ever seen the miracles that people have prayed for come through other people. And so that's what I'm grateful for. What are you grateful for? Please let me know in the comments, because A, that keeps me pumped. B, I know how to hype you a little bit. But C, it sets your brain in the right paradigm to be receptive for the answers you're looking for, whether it's in your fitness and health, your relationship, your business, or meaningful work, or your spirituality. The answers to the questions you have are in other people, and the only way to be primed to hear that is with an open heart of gratitude. So I encourage you to start the day that way. Let's talk about the markets really quick. Again, I cover the market so that you're desensitized to it, so that when people throw data at you and want you to get excited, oh, we're in a bull market, we're in a bear market, you should love life, you should hate life, that you're absolutely neutral to it, because you have your own vision, you have your own plan. So I share with you the markets. You should just know where things are at so you know how to adjust, but also so that you know how to govern your emotional state when people try to throw that at you. So number one, in TradFi world, the Dow is at 33,800. Last week it was at 34,000, just a little bit under. The S&P 500 is at 4,148. Last week it was at 4,168. This thing is break even right now. The Nasdaq's at 13,073. Last week it was at 13,188. Now in the DeFi markets, Bitcoin's down just a little bit. Bitcoin's at 27,300. It was up as high as 29,000. It pushed into almost to 31,000, which would have been fun. But last week when I reported, it was only at 29,000. So it's just a little bit down. Ethereum's at 1,841. Last week is at 2,097, down a little bit. Cardano ADA is at 38 cents, almost 39 cents. Last week it was at 44 cents. And XRP Ripple's at 46 cents. Last week it was at 51 cents. So when people tell you you should feel like things are going nuts, we're in a totally bull market, you should go spend all your money, or we're totally bear market, you should kiss your butt goodbye, you're not emotionally charged buy any of. You know that this stuff is generally trending up over time, but it might dip a little bit, it might come up a little bit. When I see a dip like I do right now in Bitcoin market, I myself am positioning myself to dollar cost average and balance out my investments. But really what matters most is what I'm building day in and day out. And that's what I want to talk about today, because really briefly, biz updates I'm giving you our biz updates as we go forward, so you have a little insight into how our businesses are going. But the big one is our real estate investment. Had a real estate investment going on in Cocoa. This would be our third property. We actually pulled out of it. It's the first real estate property that we canceled. We were a week out from the closing date, and even though we were able to negotiate from $325,000 down to $290,000, some serious savings on our investment there, we still ultimately pulled the plug for reasons. If you want to know more about our real estate investments, please give me that feedback and we'll start doing more shorts or more videos about real estate, because you should keep in the loop on, hey, our journey as we're building up our own real estate empire towards our financial freedom. And of course, there's all of our other things, the small business, the website design company, the crypto-backed training company that's coming soon. If you want to know more about that, keep apprised, subscribe to the channel and follow. But we're going to move forward with our lesson today for the sake of time, because I think this is supremely important. So let's go ahead and transition into what's going on in trustless business, or in a post-trust society as it comes to small business. How can we build? Let's talk about it. Thank you for forgiving me and giving me grace on my transition music. In the edit, I'll actually have real transition music. So in our story today, we're going to start with this. Trust is at an all-time low. Trust in business leadership and in employers specifically. Specifically, 83% people said they trust their HR manager or HR department, but nearly 66% say they neglected to report something to HR because they doubt HR could fix it. Now, most small businesses do not have an HR department. Most small businesses have a single self-employed owner and maybe 2 employees, maybe 3. The average small business in America, as of the most latest data from the Small Business Administration, the SBA, was that the average small business in America, yes, only pulls in $48,000 a year, which is barely enough for a single owner who is not paying themselves enough, and a part-timer. That's the best the average small business in America does. Now, when we think small business, we're told it's companies 500 employees or less. But the average small business owner is only pulling in about $48,000 a year. Look it up yourself. Now, the statistic I'm going to drop here about HR, just so you can kind of read a little bit of background on how trust is declining in employers. And this makes a major dilemma. Now, I want to also parallel this with something going on in crypto. For those who have been paying attention to the crypto industry at all, there was the rise and fall of what was known as DAOs, D-A-O, decentralized autonomous organizations. The idea was this: in a world where we are starting to distrust nearly all forms of leadership, how do we build with technology a decentralized organization that was autonomous, that moved itself forward by the stakeholders involved in what was known as a trustless hierarchy, or a trustless business where they voted on how things were deployed, and through smart contracts that could be the business could move forward, and once the vote was taken, it was immutable, you couldn't unwrite it, and that would cause a series of things to happen. Now, this was massively ambitious for what we wanted out of our businesses. But as soon as the rubber met the road, if you took a vote on how we should distribute the profits of the company, how does that automatically happen? If you took a vote on what causes, some person centralized with power still had to deploy that action. And there was large amounts of treasuries involved with that, and there was large amounts of immature leaders in these positions. And what we saw is this experiment with DAOs collapsed and imploded nearly entirely in late 2021, early 2022, and another fallout in mid-2022. Now, this burnt the reputation of our ability to use crypto technologies to manage our companies. However, it was an early experiment that everyone had eyes on, and similar to how we watched the SpaceX Starship explode in the air, and all the headlines said this was a failed experiment. If you actually look at the details, this was a rather successful experiment. It was successful in that we learned so much about the Starship. But similarly, for those paying attention to business leadership, we have also learned quite a bit about how decentralized autonomous organizations could move forward. But the one thing we learned, and let's caveat this for a moment, the main thing we learned at first was that we still had humans running these organizations. And when humans run these organizations and are given great amounts of dollar value and great amounts of authority, they still can tend to let us down. And this only amplified our desire or our inclination to distrust small leadership. So the rise and fall of DAOs was big for this, and it was centralized leadership in the guise of decentralized leadership. But the hope is still there, the technology is still there, and more importantly, the lessons are there. But we can all agree that trust in institutions and leadership, and now, especially with DAOs kind of capstoning it, distrust and even updated technology is at an all-time high. Now, let's look at this a little bit further. Our business and entrepreneurial systems themselves are now at risk. You see, I attended a TEDx conference in 2013, TEDx Tampa Bay, and they had an obscure, I believe, Argentinian speaker by the name of Diego Uribe, who talked about dynamic balance, which took cues from dynamic tension. And the dynamic balance, and I'll have a video for you here, the dynamic balance basically gave two metaphors. One was this. If you had a hard drive, and that hard drive had 1 gigabyte of space on it, and you overloaded that hard drive, there's only 3 possible outcomes. Number 1, you burn out the hard drive. You start losing data. The system of saving data starts breaking. You might try to save a new video, and it just not save, or it erase an old video, or it overheat and break. That's one. The other is that you see that the system has maxed, and you buy another hard drive, and you extend the system. And sometimes that'll work until you fill up that system. And as we know, with exponential increase, we're actually exponentially increasing data, and that system is no longer sufficient. Even if you keep adding hard drives, you can't add them at the rate of growth of use of data. Or the next one, you break your entire system and start over, what's known as creative destruction in economics. And look up creative destruction theory in economics or small business, and you'll see that. Now, the other example is a closet, and the same thing could happen. If you have a single closet and you fill up that closet, eventually you're going to have it get completely trashed and overflowing with clothes, and you can't manage the whole thing, and that's the system breaking. Or you bring in a carpenter and they expand the closet, but how soon before that gets filled up? Because your overage that's spilling out onto the ground already gets full, and now it's already full, and as soon as you add anything else, then you're suddenly full and you'll have the same problem. Or ultimately, you'll break your system, often throwing out old clothing or replacing your wardrobe entirely or moving into a new room. The system itself will get completely rebooted. Now, Diego went in to explain how we need to have a dynamic balance or a dynamic tension. Now, I'll stop there and parallel this to small business. In our nearly completely trustless environment of business, we do not any longer trust charismatic leaders. We barely trust the causes they're bringing to us. We barely trust our political leaders to not get dragged into some form of corruption or some form of extremism. And we shrug our shoulders and say that things just going to fall apart. Similarly, with finances and employment and salary, things are falling apart. Our system is hitting its limit. Employees, from an entrepreneurial perspective, and let's narrow the scope just down to small business and entrepreneurialism for a moment. Can employees bear the responsibility of the changes in the market? No, employees are at their absolute max. If you've had an employee at all, you know that you've heard complaints about it's just too much, I'm not getting paid enough, I want more benefits. This other person is offering me to pay $18 an hour to work at Waffle House, which is a crazy number. Inflation is hitting me too hard. I can't do more. If I'm not going to get paid more, I might as well spend more time with my family. And the vision of that small business never really gets off the ground. So employees can't bear the responsibility of the changes in the market. Clients certainly cannot bear the changes in the market. In most businesses, the old adage is, well, you should just increase your prices. Because your services cost a fixed amount and the costs of your services or products cost and are going up. So you should increase your prices, and to a point you can increase your prices, but can you increase your prices on par with inflation? Absolutely not. In fact, the out of control inflation of the US dollar is so radically fast, and as a small business owner, I experience this. I cannot increase my prices overnight by 10 and 15% just to stay ahead of inflation as my costs go up and maintain any profit margin to pay employees, to expand the business, to grow the vision, even the vision that I and the employees share. So the clients cannot bear the weight and responsibility of changes in the market. And then we say, well, the responsibility is on the business owner or the entrepreneur to bear that responsibility. But entrepreneurs can no longer bear the responsibility of increasing costs because, as the dilemmas have already expressed, we have no more dials to turn. We can't just increase the price to clients overnight. We can't simply increase the responsibility on employees. They're quitting in droves. They're not only quiet quitting, they're overt quitting, and they're not even getting new work. They just would rather not work, and they're literally quitting the overall entrepreneurial system in the marketplace at large. And so then entrepreneurs can work more hours? Probably not. The average entrepreneur is already working 50% more hours than an employed manager. So fighting with employees, cajoling them, encouraging them, sowing the vision of a cause, and let's do this for an inspirational reason. None of that works, and it falls on deaf ears, largely because it comes from the leader. Now, this business model is pointing to a traditional business model that is a top-down model, where the cause is at the very top, this cause and motivation. Maybe the cause is just incentives from higher profit margins. Maybe the cause is something inspirational, like giving back, or women in business, or giving STEM students a scholarship. But that often is coming through the entrepreneur, who we hope is visionary. And then it's trickling down and being deployed into the employees. And then we get clients based on this virtue signaling, and the clients come in and get involved. And then maybe the service is decent. Maybe the product is decent. But this old model is no longer being trusted. There's major shifts in the market that are going on. Our paradigms of what we expect out of leaders is going on. Our paradigms of how to engage employees is changing. And what matters to clients is changing when they have ubiquitous options. And it is a massive dilemma for the small business owner. Now, I'm here to tell you that I think I have a glimmer of a possible model of business. And Stump Nation says, this is a good shift in my view. Stump Nation, I'd love to hear more of what about this you think is good. And I would share with you, I do think there is hopefulness in the middle of this. And let me share this point as well. These shifts that are going on is cyclical. If you look at nearly every society, these changes happen regardless of the tech involved, regardless of the news cycle and the context going on. These shifts happen cyclically. It happens in nearly every economy. Now, very briefly, I need to give you a metaphor, and then I need to move on with my day, and I can explore this in more detail in a follow-up video. But in short, the metaphor is this. A recent piece of research was done on wolves in Yellowstone, and they were paying attention to packs and how alpha wolves actually operated. Maybe you've heard this. Our traditional view of alpha males or alpha dogs, not necessarily males, in wolf packs is that alphas dominate the other packs. They eat first. They get the largest portions of foods. They get the most amount of mates. They fight most of the fights for the wolves. But they have found a different thing. They have discovered that this paradigm of alphas in wolf packs has actually shifted dramatically. And the actual alpha in a wolf pack is the alpha whose main behavior is ensuring that all other wolves are fed equally. This is one who introduced a new wolf or a weak wolf to other wolves. This is one who brought food to the weaker wolves and included them in the wolf pack. This is a socially integrative function that the leader of the wolf pack or the wolf pack does. Taking our cue from this, you contrast this to the old model of small business, the hierarchy I've just said, which is a top-down business model, and an outdated one at that. And we've been talking for years on how this model is outdated, but we have not been presented with a new model, and I do present you with this. Spiral economies encourages a more integrative approach. And I will simply point out that the top-down approach not working, where the cause or the incentives or the motivation or the inspiration is a thought that travels through the leader and trickles down to the employees who are made and left to delegate that to so many other ways and just increase revenue and sales. However, the new integrative model, I don't have a name for it yet, but I'm calling it for now, Trustless Zero Hierarchy Business Models, or TZH, or TZ for short, we can call it what we want because it'll change, is a new integrative model where at the bottom is the current leader. And by current, I mean the leadership should shift based on the needs and responsibilities of the moment. The leader is at the bottom and is supporting all other participants. So if you take the top-down model and flip it upside down, literally the leader is at the bottom and it leads up to the other participants who all have different skills. And the other participants contribute in kind, and the cause is in the middle. And what I mean by this, the cause doesn't just come from the leader of the moment or the founder or the visionary. The cause actually arises from the community of people who say they want it. Maybe it's the employees, maybe it's the leader. And then it can be facilitated with stakeholders all receiving their share of the fruits of that business. And this can be deployed through smart contracts and stakeholding that isn't just a security, it isn't just a stock holding situation, because you can actually distribute through smart contracts to the other stakeholders. Because list the stakeholders, the founder, the employees. But who are the other stakeholders? The clients themselves, and then the sources of our costs, often called the Earth in Gaia theory, but whoever is providing your resources. And in an NFT world and in a crypto world or a tokenized world, you can find creative ways to ensure that all stakeholders benefit from the fruition of the cause, which is the center of the thing. Now, later today, I will actually post on YouTube a graphic of this and on LinkedIn where I will follow up with the implications of this and where the technology can actually replace our trust and we can entrust the system so that we don't have to depend on maybe an overbearing leader to actually distribute profits, but it gets distributed evenly and can reward and include clients in what amounts to a loyalty program, but something far beyond that. I'm taking my cue from Spiral Economies, which Jackie Roach delivered into my world yesterday. But we're going to actually explore this in coming videos because I believe we need a new model of entrepreneurialism. Real quick, Stump Nation says, right now, there are so many employees who are not up to the standard, working in extremely high-paying positions, providing with below-par products and services. And I do agree with Stump Nation is hitting on something supremely important. Not only is it employers and leaders that are letting us down, but quite honestly, underqualified, hype-driven new employees are getting paid exorbitant rates that they should never see. They're blaming or pointing towards high inflation as the cause for that, but in truth and reality, they're really not up to the basic job standards. And they're definitely not bringing a positive mental attitude, which is required for all business. So Stump, you and I are in total agreement, and we could talk more about this, but I look forward to sharing more of this model with you. So please forgive the kind of abnormal shape of today's show. Normally I have a very structured show, but I'm going to hop off right now. But I thank you for being here. Stump Nation, thank you so much for your post. We'll actually talk more about this and I will break this down more, but I think we're in total agreement on this. I appreciate your input, but we'll catch you soon. I'll post my new business model and we'll expand on that, on these thoughts in a more detailed way as I become more articulate about it. So thank you so much for your patience. Have a killer day. And here's to you igniting your own life of explosive significance.